In Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna explains to Uddhava that virtually there is no saintly man in this world who is capable of resettling his own mind after it has been disturbed by the insulting words of uncivilized man. The sharp arrows that pierce the chest and reach the heart do not cause as much suffering as the harsh and insulting words become lodged within the heart when spoken by unpious men. Even though insulted, ridiculed, neglected, or envied by bad men, or even though agitated by being beaten, tied up, deprived of one's occupation, spat upon, or polluted with urine by the ignorant man, one who desires the highest goal should, in spite of all such difficulties, remain steady on the spiritual platform using his intelligence. Throughout the history, many such inconveniences have been experienced by the devotees of the Lord. But one who is advanced in God consciousness, he does not allow himself to be obsessed with the material body. Rather, he fixes his mind on the spiritual platform using proper intelligence. In this regard, a most pious story is told by Lord Krishna, which teaches us how to tolerate such insults done by others. Once a certain sannyasi was insulted in many ways by impious people. However, by Lord's mercy and with determination, he remembered that he was suffering the fruits of his own karma. Thus, remaining undisturbed, he continued to blissfully serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Today, we are attempting to present that story of Avanti Brahmana as narrated by Lord Sri Krishna to Uddhava by the way of a solo act. I offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my spiritual master and all the assembled Vaishnavas and seek their blessings to be able to present this act for the pleasure of Lord Sri Krishna.
In the country of Avanti there once lived a Brahmana who was very rich and gifted with all opulences. But he was a miserly person, lusty, greedy, and very prone to anger. In his home, family members and guests were never properly respected, even in words. Since he was so hard-hearted and miserly, his sons, daughters, wife, in-laws, and even servants began to feel inimical towards him. Becoming disgusted, they would never treat him with affection. In this way, the presiding deities of the 5 family sacrifices became angry with the Brahmana. By his neglect of these demigods, he depleted his stock of piety and all his wealth. Some of the wealth of this so-called Brahmana was taken away by his own relatives, some by thieves, some by the whims of providence, like fire and untimely rain, some by the effects of time, some by very ordinary men, and others by government authorities. When his property was lost, his family members ignored him. Having lost all his wealth, he felt great pain and lamentation. His throat choked with tears, and he meditated for a long time on his fortune. The Brahmana had been previously trained in a pious life, but his past goodness was covered by his offensive behavior. However, finally, his previous purity was reawakened within him.
Oh, great misfortune. I have simply tormented myself uselessly, struggling so hard for the money, which was not even intended for any religiosity or material enjoyment. Generally, the wealth of misers does not allow them any happiness in this world. In this life, it causes self-torment. And when they die, it sends them to hell. A miser is afraid of spending money, even for the obligatory religious and social duties, thus offending God and people in general. He goes to hell. In earning, attainment, enjoyment of wealth, all men suffer great fear, anxiety, delusion. Bad qualities like anger, envy, pride contaminate the man because of his greed for wealth. Although these qualities are undesirable, but man falsely ascribes value to them. The wealth that cannot be properly utilized in the loving service of Supreme Lord undoubtedly contaminate the man with all these bad qualities. Therefore, it must be given up. All the relatives of a person who are united with him in love immediately break off their relationships and become enemy over a single coin. One who obtains this human form of life, which is prayed for even by the demigods, and becomes situated as first-class Brahmana, completely free from false ego, recognizing all living entities to be the eternal servant of Lord, considering himself to be lower than a blade of grass, and tolerantly offering respects to all living entities, is extremely fortunate. But one who disregards this most important opportunity of human life is certainly killing his own self-interest and meets a most unfortunate end. The Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari, who contains all the demigods within himself, must be satisfied with me. Indeed, very mercifully, he brought me to this suffering condition and forced me to experience detachment, which is a boat to cross over this material existence. Now, if there is any time remaining in my life, I will pursue that constitutes my entire self-interest. I will surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I will persist on bare necessities and remain satisfied in the self. O demigods, O presiding demigods of the three worlds, kindly show your mercy upon me. Kindly bless me. Indeed, Maharaj Khatwanga was able to achieve Lord's mercy in a single moment by completely surrendering unto the Lord.
Lord Shri Krishna continues. His mind thus determined, this most excellent Avanti Brahmana was able to untie the knots of desire within his heart. He then assumed the role of a very peaceful and silent sannyasi mendicant. O kind Uddhava, seeing him as an old, dirty beggar, rowdy persons would dishonor him with many insults.
Look at that old dirty beggar. How dirty he looks. Let's kick away his filthy begging pot and pull out his red clothes. Oh, dirty beggar. Do you want your things back? Come here. Take them. Take them. Yes, yes, yes. And now kick him. Spit on this filthy person. Tie him up. Yes, tie him up. Oh, wise old fool. Are you not going to defend yourself? Say something. I said say something. No, 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 no. He has taken a vow not to speak. Then let's beat him. Then he will cry and beg for mercy. Beat him. Beat him. Look at him. Now I will keep him as my pet.
Brahmana understood that all his sufferings from other living beings, from the higher forces of nature, and from his own body were unavoidable, being allotted to him by the providence. Many cruel persons harassed the Brahmana. His own body caused him suffering in form of fever, hunger, thirst, fatigue, etc. The higher forces of nature caused excessive heat, cold, wind, and rain. The Brahmana realized that his sufferings were due to his false identification with his material body and not due to the interaction of his body with external phenomena. Rather than trying to adjust his external situation, he tried to adjust his Krishna consciousness and thus realized his actual identity as eternal spirit soul. Even while being insulted by these low-class men who were trying to affect his downfall, he remained steady in his spiritual duties. Fixing his resolution in the mode of goodness, he began to chant his song of self-realization.
These people are not the cause of my happiness and distress. Neither the demigods, nor my own body, nor the planets, my past work, or the time. Rather, mind alone causes happiness and distress and perpetuates the rotation of material life in this world. The powerful mind actuates the functions of the three modes, from which generate various activities in modes of goodness, ignorance, and passion. From these activities, in each of these modes, develop corresponding statuses of life. Although present with the struggling mind in this material body, the super soul is not endeavoring, because it is already bestowed with transcendental realization. Acting as my friend, he is simply witnessing from his transcendental position. I, the infinitesimal soul, on the other hand, have embraced this mind, which is a mirror reflecting the image of material world. I am engaged in enjoying the objects of my desire and entangled due to the contact with three modes: charity, prescribed duties, observance of major and minor regulative principles, hearing from scriptures, pious work, purifying vows. All these aim at only subduing of the mind. Indeed, concentrating the mind on the Supreme Lord is the highest yoga. One who remains fixed and completely pacified. Tell me, what is the need of all these pious rituals for such a person? But one who remains disturbed, lost in ignorance, what is the use of all these engagements for that person? All the senses have been under the control of mind since time immemorial. But the mind doesn't come under the sway of any. He is stronger than the strongest. His godlike power is fearsome. Therefore, one who can bring the mind under control becomes the master of all the senses. Failing to conquer this irrepressible enemy, the mind, whose urges are intolerable, which torments the heart, many people are bewildered and have created useless quarrels with others, considering others to be friends, enemies, or neutral parties, completely ignoring the fact that all are eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. One who identifies with this material body, he is blinded in this intelligence, thinking in terms of I and mine. In this delusion of this is I, but that is someone else, he wanders in endless darkness of ignorance. If you say that these people are cause of my happiness and distress, then where is the place of soul in such a conception? Because the happiness and distress pertain not to the soul, but to the interactions of material bodies. And one must tolerate such dualities, understanding them to be the creation of one's own mind. But the soul is completely aloof from this body. So, if one bites his own tongue, at whom he can become angry? If you say that the demigods who rule these bodily senses are cause of this suffering, then also how such suffering can apply to the soul? Because this acting and being acted upon are merely the interactions of changeable senses and their presiding deities. But the soul is completely aloof from material body, mind, and the demigods who rule the senses. If one limb of the body attacks another, at whom one can become angry? The body has no life without soul. So, this pain and pleasure is experienced by our consciousness, which is the nature of soul. So, is it the soul which causes this suffering? However, this is not the function of soul to enjoy happiness or to suffer distress. Rather, mind's complete involvement in sense gratification drags our consciousness in this material body, where pain and pleasure shock it. So soul is not the cause of my suffering. If we analyze the hypothesis that planet cause immediate suffering, then also, where is the relationship of soul? After all, the effect of planets apply to the things that have taken birth, like one's body. But the soul is completely blissful, aloof from planets and material body. So, at whom we can vent this anger? If we assume that fruitive work is the cause of this happiness and distress, are we still dealing with the soul? Because the idea of material work arises when there is a spiritual actor who is conscious and there is a material body which undergo the transformation of happiness and distress as a reaction to such work. Since body has no life, it cannot be the real recipient of happiness and distress, neither the soul, who is completely transcendental and blissful. So, at whom can I become angry? If we assume that time is the cause of this situation, then also this does not apply to the soul, because time is the spiritual potency of Supreme Lord, and the living entities are also expansions of Supreme Lord manifested through time. Certainly, a fire does not burn its own flames, nor the snow harms its own snowflakes. The false ego gives shape to this illusory material existence, where the material pain and pleasure are experienced by it. However, the soul is completely transcendental to this material happiness and distress. It can actually never affected by any situation, at any place, under any circumstances, or by the agency of any person. One who understands this has nothing to fear from this material creation. I will cross over this insurmountable ocean of nations by completely fixing my mind in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Previous acharyas have approved this, and they surrendered their lives at the lotus feet of Lord Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Lord Shri
Hare.
Krishna says, thus becoming detached upon the loss of his property, this sage gave up his moroseness. He left home taking sannyasa and began to travel about the earth. Even when insulted by foolish people, he remained steadfast on his duty and chanted this song. No other force besides one's own mental confusion caused by identification with matter makes the soul experience happiness or distress. One's perception of friends, neutral parties, and enemies, and the whole material life which one builds around this perception are simply created out of ignorance and do not exist beyond the body's inevitable demise. Lord Krishna instructs, if one fixes one's intelligence on me, one can thus completely control the mind. This is the essence of science of yoga. Anyone who listens to or recites to others this song of the sannyasi, which presents scientific knowledge of the Absolute, and who thus meditates upon it with full attention, will never again be overwhelmed by the dualities of material happiness or distress.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,